Okay, okay, that one wasn't me. Apparently, I only get to record at 10-minute intervals, so that wasn't me hitting the wrong button this time. Um, let's see. Oh, sometimes deception is necessary for an experiment, particularly when we're looking at cognitive types of issues, because we're asking them to do one thing, but we're actually measuring something different. If you recall, there are two ways that we can deal with the issue of deception when we're talking about research. The first is, normally, if you're a researcher, you're a part of some institution. You're a part of a university, you're a part of a lab, you're part of something. Now, nowadays, most institutions, most all institutions, have an ethics board where you can submit proposals with describing fully what deception you think is necessary, and the ethics board will look over it and give their opinion on whether they think the deception is warranted or not. Of course, before you get to this stage, you discuss it informally with colleagues. If you receive resistance from the very beginning, then you need to consider, I'm not sure that this is going to be warranted. But if they encourage you, then you go to the next stage, which is the ethics board. Sometimes, though, you might be an independent practitioner and you want to do a research and it may involve deception. Normally, you're a member of some professional organization. In America, it'd be like the American Psychological Association, something like that, who has an ethics board for practitioners who want to do research and don't have their own ethics board. But in either case, you would need to receive clearance for the deception that's involved. They may come back with an approval, they may come back with suggestions for modifications. Another way you can address this is whatever population you're expecting to do the research on or with, if you can find a similar population and explain fully the same quantity of people and explain fully what you're looking to do, that also can suffice if they feel they would not feel betrayed at the end of this. The example would be, let's say I'm going to do, since I'm from Tampa, I'm going to do research at University of South Florida, okay, and I'm going to use 200 university students for whatever study, and I'm going to deceive them. What I could do is go to, I don't know, University of Seattle, the opposite end of the country, gather 200 students, psychology students, sit them down, discuss what I'm looking to do for the research and the deception that's involved, and listen to their concerns. If they say, oh no, that makes sense to me, I wouldn't feel betrayed at the end, then that also is a telling kind of thing. Because remember, at the end of everything, kind of skipping ahead here, but at the end of any experiment, we have to do the debriefing anyway. And at the end of the debriefing, we let the client, or the subject know what we did, what we were measuring, and offer to share the results with them when it's available. Obviously, they're not normally available when they finish, because not even if it was person number 200 out of the study of 200, you're not going to have the results available. It's going to take you weeks and or months to process them. Okay, some other things we have to do is confidentiality. The subjects have the expectation and the right that their data will never be matched up with their name publicly. Usually that means the only person who knows that can associate, number 47 as Mark Bowen, is the person that is running the research. No other person involved, assistants, anything like that, should have access to that data. Trying to think of any of the other types of, or a couple more. They'll come back to me in a minute. So we've designed the study. We've operationalized the variables. We make the preparation. We actually carry out the study. Then what we do is analyze our results. When we are talking about, this is a distinction within the IB, but with research in general, you do the descriptive statistics, mean, median, mode, range, standard deviation, etc. But there's usually a second component, which is the inferential statistics. These are necessary because what they do is tell us statistically whether the results we achieved were by chance, could they have been reached by chance, or is there a likelihood that they are indeed meaningful? That's why we apply the inferential statistics. So that's the last step. Then, of course, you publish your results. One of the things we've talked about with research is research that is good and valuable has been published in a peer-reviewed journal. What that means is it's published, it's put out there so that peers can see the research and indeed replicate it. Research becomes more valuable the more times it is replicated. Even if research is done which refutes it, it adds to the body of knowledge. So even if somebody's research is they replicate the results and they get something different, obviously the scientist who originally did it was not going to be pleased. But when we look at the overall knowledge issues, when we look at the contribution to human knowledge on whatever this subject area is, it's quite valuable, because we need to see, okay, well, yeah, this guy got it, he did his research and got it, but this researcher in Sweden, she got something totally different. And that brings into question, then we need to look at what was reliable and what wasn't reliable. That kind of covers the experimental methodology from beginning to end, of where you get the ideas from, then what you actually do from beginning to end, where you get the idea from to publishing your research. A couple of the other ethics that are involved are, one of the things that sometimes you run into when we're looking at observational studies, even though a person is in public, they have the right to privacy. Okay? So that means each of us, we have the right, each of us individually has the right to expect that no one is recording us, that no one is writing down what we do, that nobody is specifically taking note of what we do. So that's where you sometimes run into observational studies in the field. They are natural, and you don't have the ecological validity problem of experiments, but what you don't have is basically their informed consent, and also you're intruding on their right to privacy. Remember also that what should be built into any experiment is the right to withdraw, and that means at any moment. There can be no show of displeasure on the part of the experimenter if the subject wants to withdraw. It needs to be done, the person needs to be able to withdraw as soon as possible. In the Milgram study, as we'll see, that was one of the, well, there's so many issues in the Milgram study, but that was one of the problems also, was that they were not able to withdraw if they wanted to. There's one more that is just escaping me. The right to withdraw. Deception. Let me think for a moment. See, this is why I should have the list right here in front of me. This is the problem of talking off the top of my head. Well, we'll come back to it in a minute. It'll come back to me again. So when we're looking at the experiment is one research methodology. It's the only one that attempts to establish cause and effect. There are some other research methods particular to the biological, or I shouldn't say particular, that are used within the biological perspective, even though it's used in a variety of different settings. Another, of course, are case studies. We've looked at those pretty much in depth before. Case study can apply to not just an individual, but it can be a small group, but they all must have something in common. Twins, people who have experienced a natural disaster. They have to have some characteristic that you're studying, not just a demographic characteristic. For example, if it was people who had survived a natural disaster, you would be looking at something related to the natural disaster. You wouldn't do like a group of students from an international school if what you wanted to measure had to do with their ability to row a boat. Okay, so it has to have something to do with what they are actually, what that demographic characteristic has to have something to do with whatever you're attempting to measure. Case studies, as you know, go in depth. They spend a lot of time with people. Particularly in psychology, what you're looking at is there can be observations from third parties. The psychologist, or the experimenter can do the observation also. You may have questionnaires filled out. They might do medical exams. They might do